I think from my end, obviously, I would just say this as we get started with the season from my own standpoint with our own team, just a sincere appreciation from January on. This group has done a great job in terms of really a deep dive in getting better and growth. And, I know from my end, we're excited to get the football season going. Certainly a ton of respect for Coach Farley. This UNI team's a very veteran team like us in a lot of ways, really talented in critical areas, and I think it'll be a great challenge for us. So, Randy, if you want to get started, we'll roll.
Yeah, Matt, last night on the radio show, you said, I think I got this somewhat close, that John asked you about the fans coming back to the stadium, 61,000 strong or whatever it is, and you said it could take some time for your guys to get used to that. That was interesting to me. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I think that's a very, I think it'll be a really unique dynamic this fall, and not just for Iowa State football. I think, holistically across the board, one thing last year when there weren't fans in the stands, I think that was a whole new dynamic. But you almost learned to appreciate the game in its own sense, where you took the emotion out of it from the fan standpoint of it, and you almost got down to football in the backyard again a little bit, and you realize that you create your own momentum. And I think sometimes the mirage of a fan base, the mirage of game day experience, is a thing, and you have to realize it's a thing, but it's also a mirage. It really doesn't dictate the outcome of the game. You dictate the outcome of the game as the players. And so I just think there'll be a heightened sense of energy. There'll be a heightened sense of emotion that will be created from, a fan base and the energy of a crowd. And I think adapting to that and not letting that overtake your performance, I think, is a big thing and something we've certainly talked about. And, it's your preparation and your detail is going to have to match the energy that's going to be created by, an ulterior energy that'll be created a little bit by a fan base and all the things that come with that. So I just think that's a new thing that we're going to have to be able to adapt back to. That it may sound easy, but I think the reality of it for 18 to 22-year-olds, we'll all feel that on Saturday, and I think it's a special feeling. But how do you control it and not let it overtake you?
Do you have any superstitions about when you run onto the field? Did you look up into someplace in the stands and make sure that person is there all the time, or somebody is in the area?
I think as a coach, no. I think as a player, certainly probably did that a little bit. But I think from my standpoint now in the coaching aspect, no. But I do think trying to find a way to center ourselves before the game, I do think is really important. And however you do that, everybody's a little bit different.
Matt, you mentioned how UNI has a very veteran team, and obviously defensively, that's where they've stood out against you a couple of years ago. Who on that unit impresses you, and what about that unit impresses you?
I think the thing that probably impresses me the most is how well they're coached. And I say that they do so many different things defensively. Even the evolution of since we played them in 19 to, now who they are in 2021, they've played so many different defenses. And the thing that's so impressive is they're always in the right place where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there. And I think that to me as much as the who, I think they're really talented on the defensive line. They got long athletic corners. The safety position, whether it's a 2-high safety look or a 3-high safety look, there's really talented players there. But to me, the most impressive thing, they're always in the right spot, and to be able to be so multiple, and you've heard me talk about that from our end, is multiplicity is the key because it creates confusion. I think that's the thing that probably impresses me as much as anything.
What has J.R. Singleton done to put himself in a position to start for you guys?
Well, I think JR has come with a mindset since January, and he really flashed at times last fall for us, and I was really impressed with his veteranness approach at such a young age. I think that's one thing I've seen from young, talented players that have put themselves in the opportunity to play early in our program, is there's a great sense of maturity in how they go about their work, and JR brings that. JR is man, he's the same guy every day. He's been on a relentless pursuit to become the best version of himself that he can be. And, you know what you're going to get from J.R. Singleton every single day. And I think that alone, then you add in his talent. I think he's got elite athleticism for a big guy. He's certainly got all the tools to be able to run sideline to sideline. And so I think from his standpoint, it's the consistency of that approach that he's been able to display so far that's really allowed him to put himself in a great position to help our team be successful.
When we talked to you earlier this month, you talked about how as a program climbs up the ladder, you can begin to feel it. I was hoping you could describe what that feeling is and what your message to your team is about the rung you're at now.
Yeah, I think those were things, I probably would put that as, man, how we felt in 18, 19, 20, and I think to me it's just knowing that the expectations that we have for ourselves in terms of what we've been able to create, who we've been able to come, there's a standard of excellence of how we do everything that is demanded day in and day out. And I think sometimes when you fall short of that, whether it's in the weight room or in practice, you really stick out. And whether that's a global team performance or that's an individual performance. And, I say this a lot in our own meeting room is, man, you can't hide here anymore. If you're not going to do it to the standard, it sticks out. And so, I think it's more of that mindset in terms of our day-to-day approach than it is anything else. And, I think early on you could kind of hide because it was easy to talk about it, but it was hard to show that. And now I think it's being shown by some of the top players in our program and what that looks like, what that excellence looks like day in and day out, and really holding those guys accountable to it, but also everybody else in the program.
You talk a lot about how the standard is to become the best version of yourself. How does that get redefined, or how did that get redefined from January to now? Because obviously the best version last year is going to be different than this year, theoretically.
Well, probably to the outside world, maybe. I think to the inside world, it started back at square one with every one of our individuals. How does Mike Rose become the best version of himself? To how does a guy like J.R. Singleton, who's never played a game for us yet or played a lot of snaps for us yet, become the best version of himself? Everybody, I think that was the one unique puzzle that I had to put together, and myself, our staff, our strength staff, is how does this team become its best version of us? And you've got so many different dynamics. You got a set of veteran guys that have played a lot of football. How do we improve those guys? How do those guys take another step forward? We got a big chunk of guys that have played marginally, and some guys played with success. Some guys haven't played with a lot of success. How do we get those guys and figure out the consistency and be able to get those guys to play to the level of excellence we need? And then, man, there's this whole group of young guys that haven't played it down yet. How do we get these guys in terms of improvement and growth? And so I really think for us, this has been the most unique puzzle that we've had to put together, just because you have so many different guys and so many different groups of guys that needed so many different things. And I think that's been the unique challenge, honestly, for this football team to come together. And I think it'll show, man, did we put it together right? Are we on track as we get into the competitive element of the football season? And now you win or lose a football game. Those are the things that are exciting as the coach. But that's been the challenge really in the offseason for myself and our staff.
I don't think they've officially named a starter at quarterback yet, but Will McLuhan's back, and you guys obviously played against him in 2019. How have you seen him maybe grow and studying him, and what did he do in that game in 2019 that maybe gave you guys some trouble?
Yeah, I think, as you know, I'm a huge Will McLuhan fan, just because I love guys that are competitive excellence. And I think the thing that when I watch Will play, he's an elite competitor. I really go back to the 19 season, and you'll watch the run that they make through the playoffs, right? And I think it's almost the national semifinal game where, he's leading that football team and plays break down, tough situations come. You go to that playoff game at South Dakota and South Dakota State, and it's an incredible football game. And he makes two critical plays at the end of that football game to continue them in the tournament, and continue playing. And so I think, to me, what he brings to the table is he's an elite competitor on every play. You watch how he approaches every play, and he's playing every play to win every single play. And to me, that's impressive. And when the quarterback's got that dynamic, that mentality, your team feeds off of that. And he certainly has shown that, and I even last season, I somewhere down the line was out for a little bit. I came back that last game they played against North Dakota State. He was outstanding. I thought he was elite. And so be a great challenge for us, just because anytime a quarterback's got that mobility and mentality, I think that he gives their team a chance to win week in and week out. And I think he's shown that really every game he started, they've had a chance to win that football game.
What has Darian Porter done to work himself into a position to play more snaps on Saturdays, and how is he emblematic of that young group you talked about, being excited seeing them out there more?
Yeah, I think when I think about that group at receiver, there's two guys that have really, since January, made this, I would say, transformational change. And Darian has been one of those guys. Easy Anderson's been one of those guys. And, I think both of them have started with, how do I become the best version of me? I think both those guys had incredible January, February, March, April, and May in terms of their physical growth process. I think Easy went from 212 pounds to 230 pounds. Darian Porter, almost up to 200 pounds, and a guy that can really run and a physical football player. Both guys can play on all four of our special teams almost in every situation and bring a unique dynamic. And then I think, again, earning the trust of what they did in all those other areas as camp went on. It was like, man, these guys are now earning more reps on the offense, and then all of a sudden more opportunities became these moments in camp to do something, and they showed up. And so, I think for both of those guys, I'm really proud of them. I think both of them have really high ceilings and are just kind of getting started in terms of overall what they can give this football team in this program.
On the depth chart, kick returner was listed as TBD. I don't think that's a player on your team. So who are some of those people competing for that kick returner spot?
Yeah, I think, again, we've talked about guys like Brees has been back there and been able to do some different things for us. Xavier has been back there. Jalen Knowles been back there. There's a lot of guys back there that, we feel really confident with the ball in their hand. And so, I think that's kind of a, until you get into the season and see what it is and kind of see where we're at, I think that's kind of a revolving door right now until, we can really get some live looks at exactly what that looks like for us. But I think we feel really confident with the guys and the names that could be back there for us.
And then on the offensive line, the right side of the line, both right guard and right tackle, you have three guys, Daryl Simmons, Derek Schweiger, and then Derek Schweiger and Remsburg. How fluid is that right side of the line right now? And, all three of those guys are proven, so how confident are you that you'll figure something out there?
Well, I think I'd say there's a lot of fluidity in the entire offensive line right now. I think there's a lot of competition. The left side's not nailed down. The right side's not nailed down. I think, you better come to practice on Tuesday and Wednesday if you expect to play on Saturday. And so now, confident, man, I feel really confident because I think a lot of those guys have earned the right to have that conversation where, there's 8-9 guys right now that are competing to start on Saturday. And, who's playing, how much are they playing? It's really going to be earned by what they do in practice.
Matt, last year was a totally different feel than coming into this week. Can you kind of sum up those differences for you as a head coach? And how do you make sure that you guys come out of the gates the right way this year versus what happened last year?
Yeah, well, I don't know if there's ever a guarantee, because I think, again, the dynamics changed. It's a total different dynamic. And, I think the biggest thing is taking what we learned a year ago. I would say the biggest difference is, there was probably a week and a half period where we didn't know if we were playing or who was playing or who was even able to play for us in preparation for game one. And, at least we know what we're preparing for. And not so much I'm talking the opponent piece of it. I'm talking about what are some of these unique challenges that are going to come back from leaving a football season last year to, entering a football season and knowing that the environment's going to be very different than the environment we played in a year ago. I thought, I remember thinking last year through the third quarter of the game is what an awkward, you almost felt like you were in such an awkward environment and setting and, felt a little bit of, in my own right of, boy, I did a poor job of preparing our team for whatever this is, because I don't even know what this is, it felt like for a little while. But we adapted and we grew. And I think that's the thing about a first game every football season, but I do think, again, your environment's completely different. So you better be ready to understand what some of those maybe problems and challenges are and be ready to handle it, let alone playing a really talented opponent with a veteran football coach who, Randy said it, he's played really good against us.
The $90 million building in which we're in right now, was when you came to Iowa State, did this come up in a conversation with you and Jamie, or when you did your, one of your contract deals, did it come up in discussion? And beyond that, does this building show about the commitment that Iowa State's making to you and your program and student athletes as a whole around here?
Yeah, the first part of it, I really, I think after year one, you said, man, what are some of the things you need? You would hope to catch up. We needed a new locker room, and I think really our conversation, Jamie and I's conversation, started with, man, how do we create a new locker room? And at Iowa State, where you're in a setting where you'd love to give your kids just some space, where they've got the ability to, whether it's a players' lounge or something like that. We didn't have any of that, and you got to remember, you're talking 5 years ago, we didn't even have an athletic, feeding our guys program within our walls. And, I think by at that time, probably 90% of football had some of nutrition plan. And so, I think where we're at today is we're catching up to where everybody else has been and is at. And, I think from my end of it, you then look at Jamie did a phenomenal job, President Winterstein, of putting a vision, not just for football, just for, the student athlete piece of things. I think when you go up to the third floor and you look at the student athlete academic center, what we've got the ability to do in terms of housing, tutoring for all of our student athletes, I think outstanding. The nutrition piece on the fourth floor, phenomenal. What they were able to do there for all of our student athletes. And I know right now it's just football as we're kind of opening and working out the kinks, but, I think soon be open to all of our student athletes. And then, I think you talk about even life after athletics, and certainly in the football world, I've talked a lot about that in our own program. And to be able to house all that in one place, I do think that's been a huge commitment to us, our program. And I just think, again, student athletes want to see, man, what are you doing, and what are you doing to put my experience as the best experience we possibly can have? And I think anytime you can show a commitment from the athletic department, from the university, I think that's huge. And so I just think sincere appreciation from my end, really excited about what's opening up. We're just kind of getting in here and getting used to it, but I think it's certainly been a huge benefit for our team already in a short amount of time that we've been able to be here.
I don't know how much you followed this story, but I'm just interested to know your thoughts. Zeb Nolan's probably going to be the first guy to ever join a program as a graduate assistant and be the week one starting quarterback for South Carolina this week. What are your thoughts on that? And then what do you think has allowed Zeb to be able to do something like that?
Yeah, I'm excited for Zeb. I knew Zeb was going to, he had texted me when he was going to go to South Carolina as a graduate assistant, which I thought, I had met Coach Beamer right before the Big 12 championship game last year, as he got named the head coach, I think right before our game, and felt like, man, what a neat guy, and felt like he's going to do a great job. And for Zeb to be able to get his first experience going there as a coach, I thought would be really good for Zeb and to start his career. And I think circle back to what would allow Zeb to be successful. I think Zeb, coming from a coaching family, I think for Zeb, the ability to, he's already done that one time, went to a great program around great quarterbacks, around a great football team, his ability to adapt. And, I think if I read the story right, there's an injury there to the guy that maybe was going to be the quarterback. And I'm sure Zeb's gone in there and been a huge asset in terms of helping the players prepare. That I think it makes sense that this opportunity came his way and he was able to capitalize on it. So I'm excited for him. I'm a big Zeb fan. From recruiting him at the University of Toledo to recruiting him here, his family, what he's about, what he stands for. Zeb's a great kid, and great for him. Hopefully he can do a great job for those guys.
Matt, you mentioned the young receivers earlier. I'm curious what stood out about Jalen to allow him to make that too deep.
Yeah, I think very similar to some of the things that I talked about in J.R. Singleton's standpoint, the maturity and understanding of accountability to be your best day in and day out. And I think that's really hard for young guys to understand that. I think sometimes it's repetition and training age that allows great players to play great all the time. And yet, from January to where we are today, I feel like Jalen's been on a mission to prove that he has that kind of maturity in our program. His work ethic in the winter program was exceptional. What he did in spring was exceptional. His summer was exceptional. And, that leads into fall camp where he had opportunities to prove what kind of football player he was. And I would say there were moments where he was exceptional there. And so, I think he's really put himself in a position to help our football team. How much, which ways, I think that'll be a growth process as the season grows. But really excited about Jalen and certainly what he stands for.
What's your prep been for UNI like, given how disrupted their season was at FCS, even more than you guys had, and then losing their OC a week before the year? What's just been that dynamic been like?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is when I think you prepare for UNI. Number one, I almost feel like in the spring season they had so many challenges in terms of some injuries and whatever came their way that it was maybe a great benefit to them because they got to play a lot of guys, and a lot of those guys played really good football. And to be honest with you, I think playing football games in the spring is probably going to allow them to get off to a really good start of playing football. It's not so long ago that they played in a football game. And, I think for me, when you talk UNI, I always think of Coach Farley because I think one of the things that he has always done, and I talk about complementary football, they do a phenomenal job of playing complementary football. Every game that they play in seems, right down to the wire. They always give themselves a chance to win. Their defense complements their offense complements their defense, and they do a great job on special teams, making sure they don't make mistakes and give themselves a chance, especially with some dynamic playmakers at the returner positions for them. So, to me, I think no matter what's going to change schematically, it won't be far off because I think Coach Farley does such a great job of manipulating those pieces and putting his team in position to be successful.
Do you need to remind guys of 2019, or are there enough players that live through it?
Yeah, I mean, to me, you can talk. I think for us, and it's not even about a single team. I think it's 2020, 2019. I don't think it's more so being prepared to play in the first game, but having a great respect for who you're playing. I think you're talking about, again, a team that's very veteran, a team that's been highly successful. If you look at just their 2019 season, and I think, the win-loss record of whatever the spring looked like was a little bit skewed because of, I think the uniqueness of the season. But, man, I think you're talking about maybe one of the most veteran teams we'll play this fall, and a team that's got dynamic playmakers at critical positions. And I think that's the thing that's been exciting for our kids because I think they got their attention right away because of who is at those position groups and the wide receiver group, the defensive line group, the quarterback group. There's some great players, tailback, big time transfer there that we know is a great player. So I think it'd be a really unique challenge for all of us.
And you talked a little bit about that, Matt. I mean, obviously, your program under you guys seem to get better as the season goes on. But with this year's high expectations, high goals, how imperative is it to start out week one on a good note and at least put together something impressive that these guys can be proud about?
Yeah, I'm not trying to impress anybody. So, at the end of the day, we're just trying to get to game one, play game one, see where we're at, and kind of see where this football team is. And I think, again, that's – to me, that's all stuff for you guys to talk about and write about and have fun with. But, my end of it is, man, where are we? And I'm really excited to play because I have always said the bright lights will tell you where you're at. And, there's been times where we've been ready for the early start of the season, and maybe there's times where we thought we were ready, but maybe we weren't. And so, I think you diligently work really hard to try to put yourself and your team in the best position to get ready for the start of the season. But I'm excited for Saturday because I think it's a great challenge. It's going to be a great football game, and they're going to demand that you be at your best. And if you're not, they'll be ready to beat you.
Matt, how much do you put on Brock Purdy for play calling? I know he's evolved in his ability to read the defenses, that kind of thing. Then second part of that, how much do you think Kyle Kemp has maybe helped Brock really along the way into the senior year?
Yeah. I think there's certain times that we'll hand over some of those play calling opportunities or opportunity to maybe give him a play or two and then let him put us in the best play. Kyle has been you know, Coach Manning and I talked about Kyle a couple weeks ago as we were getting ready for fall camp. I mean, Kyle is on this trajectory, in my opinion, as a coach, as good as anybody that we have. I mean, he's brilliant. I think his ability to relate to the players has been so huge. You know, you talk even just Hunter too. You know, Hunter's been able to go into the games, and you know, when he got in last year, and I thought was really efficient. And so much credit, honestly. Coach Gordon does a great job, but to be able to have a guy like Kyle who's played in the system, that understands it, then the emotions of it, and then also, man, he's been the guy that had to be kind of waiting, and he's also been the guy with all the pressure on his shoulders. I just think his relatability to our players has been really special, and to have him in our program, I think it's been huge for all of us. I think he's a calming force on the sidelines. I think he's got the ability to relate to our offense and to certainly our quarterbacks, like Coach Gordon and Coach Manning are up in the box. And I think he brings I think if you guys know Kyle, he's got a very mild-mannered demeanor about himself. He's always calm, and he's always right here. And, you know, he helps me be right there, you know, sometimes, which is nice. Sometimes I can look at Kyle, and he can bring me back to kind of where I need to be. So, you know, Kyle's done a phenomenal job. Really, I do think he's had a great impact on Brock. I think he's had a great impact on our quarterback room, and I think he's certainly had a great impact in our program as a coach.
Matt, you opened fall camp and said that this team was well over 90% vaccinated, and you hoped by the opener that they would be close to that 100%. Are you there yet? And I guess what was your message to the team to get to that point?
Yeah, I don't know if I had a message to get to that point other than, you know, again, I know I talked about at the beginning. I think our job is to just continue to try to, you know, give our young men the best information of how to keep them safe, how to help themselves moving forward. And, you know, that's really, you know, our job in terms of a teaching aspect of it. But, you know, again, I let all of our guys make the best decision for them and their family. And, you know, are we closer to it? I think we're a little bit closer to it. Are we 100%? We're not. But, you know, those are all things where we'll just continue to handle those situations as they come week in and week out for us.
Matt, when you look back at the offseason and everything you did last year, did it feel like it took a while to get to this point? How does the offseason kind of feel to you year in and year out? Does it change?
Yeah, I think every year is a little bit different. You know, to me, there's been so much change in this offseason for us, and I think the uniqueness of like the challenges for myself and maybe our staff and everybody, you know, in the program in terms of, geez, how do we find the inches and the growth that we need to make in our program, and it's going to create all of us to do some things differently. I think that almost there was a great enjoyment of change and kind of got us out of our comfort zone. I think really forced us to uniquely learn and do different things and really do it in the best benefit of, man, we're doing everything in our power to put our kids in the best position to be successful, all of our kids. And so, you know, I think this has been one of those off seasons that it doesn't feel like it flew by, and it certainly doesn't felt like it dragged by. You know, it's kind of almost enjoyable to kind of go through each block knowing that it was a little bit different and a great challenge for all of us.
Is that something that have you had seasons where it has felt like it's gone really fast or it has gone really slow?
I think that first season it felt like we needed about another 2 years before we got on the football field. So I think that one went really fast.
There's a lot of places where big schools would probably be hesitant to play an FCS opponent that has been as good as what UNI has for as long as they have. Why is this game important to play? Not just for, you know, because obviously it's the first game, but for the state of Iowa and for football in the state.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question too. I think, you know, just being in this state now 5-6 years, and I think you understand the players in this state of all, you know, especially the three schools that play Division I football. You know, gosh, it means something, and I think, you know, they're highly competitive games. You want to play games where, man, it means something, and there's something on the line, especially, you know, for us. Geez, you play in a conference where every game you got to have it on the line. And so I think when you have such a rivalry that comes with these in-state games, it forces you that Zoom focus that you actually get in conference play, and it makes you be your best from the beginning of the season on, because you know you're going to get the best shot no matter what in-state team you're going to play. Everybody wants to win that game because there's so much on the line. So to me, I do think it makes it, number one, it makes it unique. Number two, I think it makes it really special, and, you know, especially when you play a program that has had elite success, it forces you to play your A game right away. And I've said that in this conference, if you play your B or C game here, you're going to get beat. If you play your B or C game in in these rivalry games, you're going to get yourself beat.
Coach, what have you seen from the special teams unit, specifically kickoff coverage, punt coverage, and just the kicking game in general?
I think they've done a really good job so far. We'll see on Saturday, where we're at. I think those are things that, man, it's easy to sit up here and say, man, I feel great about it or I feel bad about it. But the lights will be on Saturday at 3:30, and then maybe ask me that question afterwards. Hopefully I'll have a good answer.
We got time for one more question for Coach. Coach, for a guy like Greg Eisworth, 6-year senior, been through a lot, what's it like for the staff and this team to see him get the senior year that maybe he deserved with COVID last year?
Yeah, I think for all those guys, that's that senior class that came back here. You talk about Chase and Greg and Ennie. Those are guys that we wouldn't be where we are today without those players. And, I think really for all of those guys, and I think if you dive into their own story, they've missed all seasons where they didn't get to train. Maybe it's because of injury, different things that have happened to all those guys. And to watch them use January, February, March, April, to watch them be able to train all off season, to be able to move into this facility in June, late June, early July, and be able to have, a first-class training table for them. I have a great locker room. To me, that's special, because one thing that they've done is they've done a great job of using the weight room, using the training table, using those things to their benefit to become the best version of themselves they can be. So I'm really excited, because I think not only did they use it the right way, they've really been able to have a great advantage in terms of understanding why their time is short and it's running out, why it's so critical to use it. And I think it had a huge impact on the rest of our players, to be honest with you. So without those guys, we wouldn't be here, and really proud of really what they've done even with this team, because I think their leadership from January on has really transcended through all of the rest of our young guys in our program.
All right, thanks, Coach.
All right, guys, thank you.